Chapter 9. 10 minutes later, we were back out on the sidewalk heading down Augusta Street. "Hey, why are we walking so fast?" asked Olive. "Where's the fire?" That was an expression my dad always used. I could feel my mood getting worse, the bats flapping harder in my belly. Gritting my teeth, I nodded toward Ben, who was once again dressed in his goofy colonial getup. "Why do you think?" "I think we're hurrying to get—" Olive grinned. "Ice cream!" She pointed toward the Long John Shivers truck parked at the curb. "Did you say ice cream?" said Ben. "Why, the last time I sampled that scrumptious delicacy was while visiting Governor Facqua at his palace in New Jersey. Just before dinner, a summer storm erupted, producing enough hail for the servants to create the most astonishing strawberry confection." He smacked his lips at the memory. "I confess, I have not tasted anything like it since." "You should try the Jelly Roger," said Olive. "It's my favorite. Strawberry ice cream with strawberry jam and strawberry sprinkles. It's pink." Grabbing his hand, she tugged him over to the order window. "What do you want, Nolan?" she called back to me. "I want to go home," I said. "We need to get home." "I'll get your usual." She turned to the ice cream man, who was wearing an eye patch and a fake parrot on his shoulder. "2 Jelly Rogers and a vanilla cone." At least she remembered my favorite. The ice cream man handed the treats out the window. "That'll be $5. Olive turned to me expectantly. With a sigh, I reached into my jeans pocket. "Allow me," said Ben. He pulled out a strange-looking bill and handed it through the window. Hey, old man, what are you trying to pull?" asked the ice cream man. "This isn't real money." "It most certainly is, good sir," retorted Ben. "That is a 10-shilling note. It is legal tender in all the American colonies. I should know. I printed it myself." The ice cream man stuck his head out the window so he and his fake parrot could look Ben in the eye. "You want to know what I do with homemade money, good sir? Watch this." He wadded Ben's bill into a ball and tossed it into the trash can. The fake parrot rocked back and forth. It kind of looked like it was laughing. "How dare you toss away legitimate money?" demanded Ben. He held the ice cream cone with one hand and put the other sternly on his hip. "Fie on you, sir!" "Oh, yeah?" replied the ice cream man. He flipped up his eye patch and made a fist. I pushed between them. "I got it," I said, handing up 5 singles. The ice cream man took the bill. "Crazy old coot," he grumbled under his breath. Flipping his eye patch back down, he slammed the window shut. "What an impolite fellow," muttered Ben. He turned away and took a bite of his ice cream. But he does serve a delicious confection." "I told you so," said Olive through pink-smeared lips. We strolled through the town park. It was the middle of the afternoon and people lounged on the shaded benches, escaping the heat. Kids climbed on the playground equipment, dogs panted under the trees. A teenager slooshed by on a skateboard. Ben watched, transfixed. "A decidedly odd form of amusement," he finally commented. "I can ollie," said Olive. "No, you can't," I said. "If I owned a skateboard, I could," she retorted. "Oh, brother. Who, pray tell, is Ollie?" asked Ben. It's not a who, it's a what, began Olive. I interrupted. Just forget it. I could feel people's eyes boring into us. Let's walk faster, okay? On the contrary, said Ben, let us sit a moment. He lowered himself on a bench and with a loud sigh and an even louder Ew, gross, said Olive. The best of all medicines are rest and farting, replied Ben. He took a last lick of his ice cream. Olive made a face. I'm going to go swing. We have to go, I reminded her. And soon. Yeah. She raced to the playground, a trail of melty pink drops marking her path. Ben patted the bench space next to him. The last thing I wanted was to sit. But Ben looked tired. I guess stunt swimming, not to mention traveling almost 300 years, will do that to a guy. Do you promise to stop, that? I asked. I shall strive to control the whirlwinds in my bowels, he replied. I perched with my half-eaten cone at the far end of the bench. I hoped I was upwind. Tell me, said Ben, was that a likeness of my good friend George Washington on the money you gave that peddler? He's on the dollar bill, I said, catching a vanilla drip with my tongue. Other denominations have other faces. Famous faces, I presume? I nodded. Famous Americans. You know, people who did important stuff. I twirled the cone around in my mouth. Abraham Lincoln is on the $5 bill. Ben sniffed. Huh, him again. Don't feel bad, I said. You're on the front of the $100 bill. You don't say. $100. His face lit and he turned to me. I should very much like to see one of these bills. Wouldn't we all? I said. From the playground, Olive shouted, Hey, Ben, watch this! She hung upside down on the monkey bars. Be careful, young miss, he hollered back. Then he said to me, You know, Nolan, my daughter was once a little girl like Olive, high-spirited and full of fun. Sally, we called her. She's grown now. I'm an orangutan, cried Olive. She scratched under her arms and hooted like an ape. I also have had one son, said Ben. For a split second, he kind of looked lost. Then his confusion, or whatever it was, cleared. He went on. Dearest Frankie, stolen from his mother and me by smallpox at age 4. To this day I cannot think of my little boy without a sigh. He gazed at Olive, who was now swooping back and forth on a swing, shouting, I'm flying! I'm flying! I missed most of Sally's childhood, he finally said. At first, I was too much occupied with my printing business and my electrical experiments to spend time with her. Then I journeyed to London on behalf of Pennsylvania's colonists to take up the matter of taxes. He paused. I did not expect to be away from home for 17 years. By the time I returned, we were strangers. Our dad's in London, I said. He moved there 2 months ago. My parents are getting a divorce. Right away, I wished I hadn't told him that. Believe me, talking about the divorce was not something I did. Ever. When my friends asked why they didn't see my dad around anymore, I just told them he'd gone away on a business trip. A long business trip. Even Tommy Tuttle hadn't figured out that secret yet. Ben watched me for a long time. "Ah, Nolan," he finally said. He laid his hand on my shoulder. I didn't brush it off. We sat there together, each of us lost in our own thoughts, until Olive came running back. She wiggled in between us. "Ooh, comfy cozy." Ben smiled. "Snug as a bug in a rug." I have to admit, it was pretty nice. I leaned back, letting myself relax. I even joined in when Olive started humming Yankee Doodle. "Oh, how jolly," said Ben. "I know that tune." "I just bet you do," came a familiar voice. Then the branches of a nearby lilac bush started to shake. A second later, Tommy Tuttle, wearing a camouflage jumpsuit and a pair of binoculars around his neck, stepped out in front of us. I shook my head in bewilderment. What was this kid and bushes? And where did he buy those clothes? Olive looked at him and pointed. "Were you peeing in there?" "What? No!" snapped Tommy, his cheeks turning red. "I was staking you out, see?" He held up a notebook labeled Crime-Solving Journal. "I've had you three under surveillance all morning." "Under what?" asked Olive. Tommy ignored her question. "I took detailed notes on everything I saw and heard," he went on. "And believe me, chumps, what I saw and heard was beyond strange." "Ha!" huffed Olive. "He called me a chimp." "Chump," I corrected her. "And who says chump anymore?" "Both words sound most impolite," added Ben. I tried to act casual. "I don't get what's so strange," I said. "We've been to the library and the pool, had some ice cream." I shrugged. "Seems like an ordinary summer's day in Rolling Hills to me." "There's more to it than that." From the pages of his notebook, Tommy pulled out a small square of paper. "And this proves it." I recognized it right away. It was the shilling note Ben had printed, the one the ice cream man had thrown into the trash can. Tommy waved the money triumphantly. "Now what do you say, "I say you're a sneaking little snoop," hollered Olive. "Sneaking is in my blood," replied Tommy with a little smile. "My grandfather is a security guard." I was stunned. He really had watched us all day. My mouth opened and shut, and I blurted out the first thing that came into my head. "Yeah, well, my grandfather is a dog groomer. That doesn't make me Skippy John Jones." "Huh?" said Olive. "I thought Grampy was an accountant." "Who, pray tell, is this Skippy John Jones?" asked Ben. "Forget it," I muttered. Tommy started strutting around in front of us like a lawyer in some courtroom drama. "This is colonial money. It's real. I know because I looked it up in Factopedia. It came from his pocket." Pointing at Ben, he paused to let the words sink in before adding, "So where did he get colonial money? There's only one explanation. He brought it with him from colonial times." "Maybe he brought it at the antique barn over on Linden Street," I said. "Yeah," Olive cut in. "The antique barn on Linden. Bet you didn't think of that." "The antique barn went out of business," said Tommy. "I know because I looked in the windows." He stroked his chin. "So just how did Benjamin Franklin and his money get here, He was silent for a moment. Then the corners of his mouth turned up. "There's only one way to find out the truth." "Oh yeah? Like what, Detective Dork?" I said. A hidden camera? A bugging device? Maybe you could just ask George Washington. It wasn't a great line, I know, but I was nervous. I didn't like the sly look on Tommy's face. There are better ways, he replied. Yes, much better ways. And turning on his heel, he abruptly walked away. Butthead! Olive hollered after him. We looked at Ben. His face was red with glee. I obviously and heartily agree, he said with a giggle. Gross, said Olive, giggling too. I didn't join in. Instead, I watched as Tommy hurried out of the park, past the ice cream truck, and down Augusta Street. We should go home, I said. And let that meanie ruin our day? No way, said Olive. She flung her arms wide and exclaimed, Last one of the fire station's a rotten egg! She took off running. Chapter 10. Since Rolling Hills is located smack dab in the middle of Illinois, the flattest place on earth, the town isn't exactly rolling or hilly. In fact, it only has one little hill. My teacher last year, Mr. Druff, calls it a hillock, and the fire station is built on top of it. Today, the station's garage doors stood wide open, displaying Rolling Hills' one and only fire truck to passers-by. Brave and red, the truck's spotless chrome and brass glinted in the sunlight. Ben stopped short in his buckled shoes. He gasped. He pointed. He squealed like a little kid. Oh, look yonder! The truck's bright reflection flickered in Ben's glasses, and his face beamed with joy and excitement. It is fantastic! How I wish my fire company had such conveyance! Yeah, it is real shiny, but we really don't have time to stop, I said. I was still worrying about Tommy. Just then, a troop of wide-eyed little kids came down the sidewalk, each clutching their buddy's hand. They shuffled towards us 2 by 2, like some weird version of the animals boarding Noah's Ark. Each of them had on a yellow t-shirt that read Pitter Patter Day Camp, and a red construction paper name tag shaped like a fire hydrant. The kids looked slightly lost, gazing here and there, bunching up when they stopped. One boy, whose hydrant identified him as Polly, asked, Where are we? It's the fire station, chirped their counselor, who also wore a fire hydrant. Hers read, Miss Missy. A wide, white-toothed smile spread across her face. We're here to meet Fire Chief Sid and see the fire truck, remember? Fire trucks are dumb, grumped Polly. Yeah, dumb, said his buddy, whose hydrant read Braden. I like digger trucks, grumbled Polly. Yeah, digger trucks, said Braden. Polly scrunched up his face. Stop copying me, he howled. Miss Missy, he's copying me. And I like cupcakes, said Braden. The other kids nodded. Cupcakes. People were talking about trucks here, Polly corrected them. Cupcakes are not trucks. His little hands turned into little fists. Now, Miss Missy playfully wagged her fingers at the boys. Come on, you two. Turn those frowns upside down. Braden smiled, but Polly stuck out his lower lip. Come along, Gloomy Gus, said Miss Missy. My name's not Gus, it's Polly. He looked down at his name tag, squinting closely at the letters. D-E-N-3-X-F. See? That says Polly. Miss Missy burst into song. The happy train is coming, get on board, choo-choo. She tugged on an imaginary whistle. The happy train is coming, get on board, choo-choo, chimed in all the other preschoolers. A boy named Kevin pulled his finger out of his nose and pointed at Polly. Gustin and Choo-Choo, he tattled. It's Polly, cried Polly. D-E-N. By this time, the other kids were beginning to wander distractedly. We found ourselves surrounded. Are you the oatmeal man? A girl labeled Gloria asked Ben. Olive giggled. He looks like the man on the Quaker Oats box, but he's really... You dress funny, piped up Kevin, poking Ben in the belly with the same finger that had been up his nose. I can tell you eat cupcakes too, said Braden. Cupcakes, said the other kids. I like corn, said a boy whose hydrant read Clarence. I eat corn every night. Miss Missy clapped her hands. Boys and girls, look who's here. It's Fire Chief Sid. Hooray, Fire Chief Sid, chimed the kids. They swarmed around a smiling firefighter who'd come out onto the sidewalk carrying a stack of toy hats. Let's get a fire hat, said Olive. Hats? squealed Ben. There are hats? Oh, brother. We joined the group of kids just as Fire Chief Sid tried to put a hat on Polly's head. Here you go, kiddo. He pushed it away. You got construction hats? I like construction hats. The chief looked at Polly, not knowing what to say. I like dinosaurs, said a girl named Kristen. Me too, said Braden. I like race cars, added a boy named Kwame. Me too, said Braden. Puppies, sharks, corn. Miss Missy clapped her hands. Boys and girls, where are your manners? Gloria looked around. They must have ran away. Still the kids quieted down. Fire Chief Sid passed out hats. One for you, he said, and one for you, and one for... He did a double take when he got to Ben. Aren't you a little old for toy hats? Ben bristled. I may look old, but I assure you I am young at heart. The chief looked Ben up and down. Taking in his fur hat and silk breeches, he turned to me. Is he pulling my leg? Good sir, I have most assuredly not touched your leg, replied Ben. The oat man can have my hat, said Polly. Give one to the oat man, said Gloria. Suddenly, the whole group began chanting, Oat man, corn! Shrieked Clarence. Looking a little panicked, Chief Sid handed a hat to Ben. Well, I guess if you're with the kids. Right away, Ben whipped off his fur cap and put on the plastic one. Tell me, Nolan, do I look like a fireman of the 21st century? No, I thought, but I didn't say it out loud. He acted so proud, I didn't have the heart to tell him how dorky he looked. The group drifted inside, following the chief, and Ben and Olive drifted right along with them. I followed. We stopped beside the big red fire truck. Here are some of the tools we use to fight fires, the chief said in a teacherly voice. He pointed to a long spear-like object. Does anyone know what this tool is called? Is it a laser sword? A girl labeled Abby asked hopefully. It is a pike pole, said Ben. He turned to me. Some tools haven't changed in centuries. Fire Chief Sid flashed Ben an annoyed look before continuing. And who can guess what we use this tool for? Any guesses? To defeat the evil empire? Said Abby. To pick corn, said Clarence. We use it to reach, hold, and pull during fires, said Ben. He blushed modestly. I confess I am highly trained in the art of the pole. My fire company meets and trains monthly at the Royal Standard Tavern." The kids looked from the chief to Ben and back to the chief. Chief Sid rubbed his forehead like he was getting a headache. He turned and pointed. "Hoses!" cried Ben before the chief could even ask his question. "Axe!" he shouted out a few moments later. "Maybe if the Oatman should be the chief," said Polly. "Maybe you should stop answering all the questions," I whispered to Ben. Ben shook his head. "Knowledge should never be extinguished." Ignoring both Polly and Ben, the chief opened the door on the driver's side of the fire truck. "Who wants to sit inside?" The kids' faces brightened, but before they could even raise their hands, "Ooh, me!" exclaimed Ben. He pushed his way to the front of the group. Fire Chief Sid put out his hands to stop him. "Just the children," he said sternly. "Well, yes, of course," said Ben. He stepped back. We watched for a few minutes as kid after kid was boosted up into the driver's seat. The chief let them honk the horn and turn on the red and blue emergency lights. Gloria even got to try out the siren, but its sudden, piercing howl was startling. "Turn it off!" screamed Polly, plugging his ears. "Turn it off!" screamed Brayden. "Stop copying me!" shrieked Polly. "Corn!" shrieked Clarence. It was like some sort of 4-year-old battle cry or something, because instantly the kids started screeching, bumping, crawling, shoving. Kristen pretended to be a T-Rex. Grrr! Abby pulled out an imaginary laser sword. Shrim! Kevin struck his finger up his nose. "I'm picking a winner." Olive, Ben, and I ducked for cover behind the still open door of the fire truck. "Phew!" exclaimed Olive. "It's crazy out there." "Such pandemonium reminds me of my days in Congress," agreed Ben. "Indeed, that little nose picker is the spitting image of John Adams." Behind his bifocals, his eyes took on a faraway look, like he was about to launch into a story. Miss Missy's chirping broke into his thoughts. She raised 2 fingers in the air. "The quiet sign is up!" The kids paid no attention. They kept squealing and running and growling and picking all over the fire station garage. Miss Missy frantically clapped her hands. "1, 2, 3, eyes on me!" The kids bumped and banged and pinballed off one another. "I'll take care of this," said Chief Sid. He put his hands on his hips and bellowed sternly, "Children, refrain from this horseplay at once." They flung their plastic hats at him. Chief Sid shouted a word I can't repeat, but the kids did, like a chorus of naughty parrots. They said the word over and over at the top of their voices. "Now you've done it!" cried Miss Missy. Then she clapped her hands again. "Language, language! Take a deep belly breath, children. Find your good words." The kids liked the bad one better. By this time, Chief Sid had really had it. He stormed over to a side door that led into the station's yard and flung it open. "Everybody out!" he thundered. Polly, who was still standing with his ears plugged, jumped about a foot. Then he started crying. Loud. Miss Missy picked him up. She whirled on the chief. "What kind of person goes around screaming at children?" Chief Sid just pointed. "Corn!" shrieked Clarence. He tumbled out the door. The kids swarmed after him. "Boys and girls, where's your buddy?" Miss Missy frantically called to them as she stumbled over the threshold. "Find your buddy!" "Buddies are dumb," whimpered Polly. Then Chief Sid slammed the door behind them. Leaning against it, he rubbed his face, obviously forgetting all about us. Headache, he muttered. Aspirin. He staggered away. We were alone with the fire truck. Olive looked at Ben. Ben looked at Olive. Oh, no, you don't, I said. But Olive was already scrambling up into the truck's cab. Panting, Ben clambered up behind her. He settled himself in the driver's seat. Just look at all of these marvelous folderols, he exclaimed. Don't touch anything, I cautioned. Oh, but I would not dream of it, my boy, he said. He adjusted his plastic hat so it tilted over one eye and placed his hands on either side of the steering wheel. Vroom, vroom! Ben looked so happy. I had to grin. Come in with us, Nolan, begged Olive. It's so cool. It is most decidedly, shall we say, cool, said Ben. Come on, Nolan, urged Olive. Just for a second. And what could it hurt? Glancing around to make sure no one was looking, I climbed into the cab. Hooray! Cried Olive. Ben wiggled over to make room. I pulled the heavy door shut behind me. Ben was right. There were lots of folderols, and it was cool. I gripped the big steering wheel, just managing to see over it. Outside on the sidewalk, a kid in camouflage jumpsuit stopped in front of the station, straddling a blue bike. He stared at the fire truck. Then he saw us in the cab, and his eyebrows rose all the way to his bushy hairline. Hey, there's Tommy Tuttle, said Olive. She leaned forward to peer through the big windshield. And there's our crystal radio! Tucked in the front of Tommy's bike lay a familiar wooden box. Its gold initials HH glittered in the sunlight. Over the truck's wide hood, Tommy and I locked eyes. Then he leaped back onto his bike and pedaled away. No, I said, slamming my fist on the steering wheel. No, no, no! The last slam hit the gear stick. There was a clicking sound and a grinding noise and a thump, thump, thump. Then the fire truck inched out of the double door slowly. Whoa, whoa! I cried, grabbing at the gear stick. I tried to yank it back into place, but it refused to budge. Zoons, but this is most exciting, exclaimed Ben. My first trip in a modern conveyance. Oh, but the speed is dizzying. Whee! Whooped Olive. At the top of the driveway, at the top of the hill, the truck seemed to pause. Then it dipped, lurched, picked up speed as it rolled down the street. Ahead of us, we could see Tommy pumping furiously. Oh, my, said Ben. Whoopee! Cried Olive. Get out of my way! I hollered. I laid on the horn. Wah! It bellowed. Tommy looked over his shoulder and his mouth dropped open. Did he think we were chasing him? Facing forward again, he lowered his head into the wind and began pumping away like an Olympic bicyclist. Ahead of us loomed a busy four-way stop. Tommy took a sharp right. It was all I could do to grip the steering wheel and keep the truck on the road. Might I suggest you slow down? Asked Ben. Brakes! Brakes! Cried Olive. But my foot didn't reach the pedal. Watch out! Ben and Olive shrieked in unison. They grabbed each other as the truck barreled through the intersection. Brakes squealed, horns blared. The sudden wail of a police car grew louder and louder. Hopping a curb, the truck bumped up onto the sidewalk and across a grassy stretch of City Park, straight toward... Watch out! Yelled a lady walking a poodle. I closed my eyes, but the crash never came. Instead, the big truck lurched, bounced, and slowed. With a final jerk, it came to a stop, just inches from the town statue of Abraham Lincoln, with its chiseled quote, "With malice toward none, with charity for all." I clung to the steering wheel, dazed, my heart pounding. Is everybody okay? I croaked. Ben mopped his brow with his handkerchief. Yes, He managed a weak nod. Let's do it again, squealed Olive. There will be no more stunts, said a stern voice. Suddenly I turned to look out the driver's window. There stood Officer Niddles, her hands on her hips. I gulped and stared at her shiny badge, her utility belt, the big gun holstered at her hip. I rolled down the window. Hi? I said. Officer Niddle comes to my schools every year to hand out sticker badges and coloring sheets and teach the friendly police program. She was not looking too friendly now. She opened the cab door. Step out of the vehicle, gentlemen, she said to Ben and me. Me too? Asked Olive. You too,